crimes and aggression can be easily explained as the cause of fake historical justice, because only few people will check whatever it's true or not.
Bonjour, vous regardez l'Ukraine en flammes, une chaîne YouTube en français par l'Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Je m'appelle Tetiana Ogarkova et dans ce projet, on vous raconte comment l'Ukraine résiste face à l'agression russe. Dans la première interview de Vladimir Poutine, président de l'Ukraine, avec la presse internationale, le Kremlin avait sélectionné le journaliste américain Tucker Carlson, ancien animateur de Fox News, pour faire cette interview. Et ceci n'est pas une surprise. Carlson a appelé les Américains à suspendre le programme d'aide américaine de plusieurs milliards à l'Ukraine. Il a comparé le président ukrainien Volodymyr Zelensky à un rat et il qualifie la guerre que la Russie mène contre l'Ukraine à un conflit de frontières, à un conflit pour des territoires. Dans l'épisode d'aujourd'hui, nous allons parler en longueur de cette interview de Poutine accordée à Tucker Carlson qui a duré pendant 2 heures. Nous allons essayer de démontrer les manipulations historiques, absurdités et mensonges qui ont été utilisés par le chef du Kremlin dans cette interview. Si vous souhaitez en savoir plus, continuez à regarder cette vidéo et n'oubliez pas à vous abonner à notre chaîne YouTube pour ne pas manquer nos vidéos à venir. Lors de cet entretien avec Tucker Carlson, Poutine a prononcé des phrases surtout sur le passé. Selon la logique de Poutine, les dirigeants, où qu'ils soient, peuvent revendiquer les territoires à l'infini en se basant sur diverses interprétations du passé. Ça détruit bien évidemment l'ordre international tout entier fondé sur les frontières définies et juridiques et définies entre les États souverains. Dans sa conversation avec Carlson, Poutine s'est concentré sur le 9e, 10e et 11e siècle, sur l'époque en fait où Moscou en fait n'existait pas. Ainsi, nous pouvons faire ce voyage dans le passé avec Vladimir Poutine et faire attention au fait qu'il s'agissait d'un pays dont Moscou n'était même pas la capitale et l'immense territoire de la Sibérie n'appartenait pas à la Russie. Est-ce que la Russie serait prête de renoncer à ces territoires en Sibérie qui lui donne aujourd'hui du gaz et du pétrole, tout simplement parce que, dans le passé, ces territoires ne lui appartenaient pas? Le candidat en sciences historiques Ihor Stambol va démystifier quelques mythes parmi des nombreux mythes utilisés par Poutine dans cette interview avec Tucker Carlson. Écoutons-le.
Putin, apart from all his psychological traits that make him a typical Russian character, we can call it hopnik, is also a great, as we see, historiophile. By and large, when a politician has nothing to justify his actions with, he has to turn to history and distort something in his own way. The technique is not new. For example, Mussolini appealed to the history of Roman Empire and Hitler to the kings of the Crusades era and some other fabrications about the Aryans. Crimes and aggression can be easily explained as the cause of fake historical justice because only few people will check whatever it's true or not. The very dictator's authority makes you believe because can someone who is trusted by millions lie? But he does and is not ashamed of it. In general, the history of so-called Russia, or rather Muscovy, is the territory around where Kremlin was called until the 18th century, is as much related to Kievan Rus as Romania is to Roman Empire. Try to imagine modern Romanians starting a war with Italy to regain their former metropolis. But no, Romanians realize that they belong to the Dacians and build their own identity on it. And Putin and his supporters don't want to admit the obvious fact that building their identity on the historical myth of Rus is their own way, because Ukraine, that is the real historical territory of Rus, does not belong to them anymore. Therefore, it would be worth looking for the roots of Russian statehood in the Mongolian Golden Horde or Finno-Ugric tribes. Where does Putin lie when he resorts to historical articles or lectures? Firstly, he repeats the propaganda message from the time of Romanov Empire that after the Mongols conquered Kiev, Ukrainian territory lost their subjectivity. Allegedly, the territory where Moscow is now became the center of Rus, but he simply doesn't notice the Galicia-Volhynia Principality of a kingdom of Rus, which existed more than 2 centuries and had its own kings. That is, in the city of Halich, not far from modern Lviv, there was a king who received a crown from the Pope and called himself the King of Rus. But Putin simply does not mention him. Interestingly, when Rus Ukraine had its kings, the territory around Moscow was an ordinary vessel of the Golden Heart. Secondly, Putin himself has got confused in lies about the name Ukraine. Now he says it comes from the word Okraina, outskirts of Muscovy, then from the Okraina, outskirts of Poland. In fact, like in many other nations, the name of the country came from the word which means some territory or land, and in Ukrainian it sounds like cry. Another lie is that Ukraine was invented in the Austrian headquarters during World War I. Indeed, at that time, the separation of Ukraine from the Russian Empire was supported by the Central Powers, but it was based on the aspirations of the Ukrainians themselves, which was expressed in dozens of political works of Ukrainian leaders of the 19th century. It is interesting that Putin mentions those leaders, but emphasizes that they always advocated that independent Ukraine must be in friendship with Muscovy. The truth is that Ukrainian thinkers believed that there should be good neighbor lines with Moscow on equal terms. And they also emphasized that it can only happen when Moscow is democratic and liberal. Being as dictator, Putin cannot remember this, of course. His claims about the commonality of the Ukrainian language and culture with those of Moscow are also an absurdity when even Putin himself does not actually believe in. He lies about the percentage of common vocabulary in dictionaries, saying about 90%, because in reality it's slightly more than 60. And culturally, if we compare our national costumes or Christmas carols, which Russians simply do not have, everything will become clear. Other commonalities mentioned by Putin, such as family and economic ties or shared historical events, are nothing more than Kremlin's colonial and assimilation policy, and of course, usual manipulation. Putin's claims over the southern part of Ukraine based on the argument that these lands were won back from Turkey by Russian Empire, absolutely similar to his, Putin's phrase that Russia would have won the war against Hitler on its own, and with this mean without Ukrainians.
La Russie est éternelle, alors les Russes peuvent faire tout ce qu'ils veulent. Voici le point de vue de Vladimir Poutine. Tout ce qui ne correspond pas à cette vision de l'histoire doit être éliminé de l'histoire. Pour Poutine, les gens qui pensent autrement ou qui gardent une autre mémoire historique ne comptent pas, ils doivent être éliminés. D'où en fait la nécessité de la violence pour éradiquer, eraser tous ceux qui ne sont pas d'accord. Notre prochain expert interviendra sur ce sujet.
The tradition of the Russian history narrative regarding Ukrainian history date back to the age of Finno-Ugric rule. It is precisely this period that Ukrainians' northern neighbors entered at the starting point of their own history exercise. In general, the tendency to ascribe to one's the past of the other nation is characteristics of all imperative ideologies. Russia is a good example here. It presents a kind of fairy tale or lion visions of history there. The narrative are always portrayed as good, while the other lion are depicted as an emanation of ill. The contrast belongs to the intellectual achievement of science theoretics of the 19th century, when the ideals of a nation was just being formed. Such a perspective productions the polarization of lives. They evolved for shapes divided into black or white.
C'était l'épisode de l'Ukraine en flammes, une chaîne YouTube en français par l'Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Je m'appelle Tetiana Ogarkova et nous n'allons pas tarder à enregistrer et diffuser d'autres épisodes. Dans la description sous cette vidéo, vous trouverez des informations utiles sur la manière dont vous pouvez aider l'Ukraine à continuer sa résistance. Si vous trouvez notre travail utile, n'hésitez pas de commenter et de partager cette vidéo. Restez avec nous et soutenez l'Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!